I'd love to call the regular meeting to order. And Al, if you would lead us in the pledge.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. First item tonight would be our public comment. And if you would come up, give your name, address, try to restrict time to 5 minutes. And anybody like to address the board? That's right.
It's good to see all of you tonight. I wanted to just wonder if you had caught those photos of the video of the fire up on County Line the other night. And I thought those flames were astonishing, and the whole story was amazing about the owner dragging out his customers' property to prevent their damage, and then the heroism of all the fire departments. I think there were 10 involved that came together to extinguish all those flames. What also caught my attention was some reports about water pressure, like this one on Channel 13. It said, the quote, "The owner of the business destroyed by a fire said the building was slow to burn, but problems with water pressure slowed firefighters from the 10 departments called to the scene." Or on YNN, it said that firefighters faced delays in fighting the fire after issues with water pressure at a hydrant. It turns out there's a hydrant right next to the building, which I'm guessing is the one they're talking about. The building affected was about a century old, according to reports, and we have many buildings that old or older in the village. My house actually is one of them. And just like any structure, they're vulnerable to fire. So what I wanted to ask tonight is the village in receipt of sort of regular reports on pressures for our fire hydrants along our streets? And I was wondering how frequently those pressures are checked. And I was also wondering if those pressures fail, how is it corrected? So I guess, and I don't know the answer to that because it's sort of a new territory we've entered into. Obviously before it would be easy to pull that up, and perhaps we're getting those reports now, but I just want to know, do we? Thanks.
Thank you. Jake, I could refer that to you. I don't know whether or not they have set up a schedule or not, Monroe County Water Authority, for hydrant information or.
I know they go through and exercise valves. I don't want to really speak for them, but I do know they go through and exercise main lines valves and things like that, and they have a hydrant repair crew that goes around and makes repairs to hydrants and does maintenance work on those. But they're probably the best, the best resource to tell you exactly what their program is.
Did you read the article in this morning's newspaper?
I read maybe, I don't know which
There's an article in this morning's newspaper because Sandra Frankel, who was running for county executive, wrote a letter to the head of the Monroe County Water Authority complaining about and wanting an investigation done because of alleged low water pressure and the effect on that fire. And the response from the Union Hill fire chief is that there was absolutely nothing wrong with the hydrant. There was nothing wrong with water pressure. He said it was such a large fire that a single hydrant wouldn't have been able to handle the amount of water coming through it, no matter whether it's an existing 6-inch main, whether it was a 6-inch main or a 12-inch main. They had to open up additional hydrants because of the fire. And he said there was absolutely no problem with how anything worked.
Okay.
And then the county said, the Monroe County Water Authority says, they annually inspect every hydrant, some 25,000, I guess, hydrants within their jurisdiction. They don't check water pressure, though. They just make sure the hydrants are working properly. And in this particular case, the 6-inch main was installed by a water district of the town of Webster back in the 1940s. And if the way to solve water pressure problems is to increase the size of the main, which isn't the water authority's under the lease. They maintain the infrastructure. The infrastructure, though, is still owned in the village's case by the village, and in the town's case because we're leasing it to the water. The water authority is leasing it.
But they do replace it.
if it breaks, they maintain them. So obviously if a main breaks, they'll replace it. They won't upgrade them though. And that's how you solve pressure problems. So if, for example, someone thinks the pressure is too low and you want to fix that, that's up to, in the village's case, the village to pay to do that, or in the town's case.
Okay, I'll look at that a little more, I didn't know about the article in the paper.
Yeah, read the
Hard
article.
for me to agree with Sandy Frankel, so thank you.
Read the article in this morning's newspaper.
If I can build on that just a second, I did receive a call this afternoon from somebody asking similar questions that I think was associated. That answered some questions there, and it did prompt me to call the Water Authority and had a real similar conversation that there's, there's certainly an issue when you have that large of a fire, and the analogy that I tried to use is anybody that's ever put in a new lawn or, had multiple sprinklers off of one garden hose. The first one you hook up shoots pretty far, and then you hook up another one and another one and another one, and pretty soon they're shooting less and less. And I think it was a misconception that, they said to me that after 20 minutes they ran out of water. They didn't run out of water. They just were using what they needed. And as a fire incident progresses, more and more equipment come on scene and start hooking up to the same source. That's also on the boundary of a system. So you might have differences when you're fed from multiple directions versus being fed from just one direction. I don't know the exact layout of those mains and how they are, but it's certainly, when you have a fire that large, there's going to be, there's always water. You can never have enough water when the flames are getting higher. So,
Do you get reports about the pressures in the islands?
no, I don't get reports.
Okay, thanks.
Nope.
Eric Reynolds, 64 Kircher Park. I wanted to read a letter that I received from a former employee of the village of Webster. I think it's important to get this out. It says, "Dear Citizens Action League, I am the clerk who took Anne Marie's position after she left. 9 months later, I am yet another village employee who fell victim to this administration's harassment, bullying, and abuse of power. I was forced to resign under extreme emotional stress. Like other employees before me, I became the victim of a malicious witch hunt orchestrated by the entire administration. It all began in my second or third month of employment when 2 of the employees forced me into their witch hunt against a 3rd employee. After I refused to get any further involved in these office politics, I became the object of their witch hunt. After I submitted a complaint to the Civil Service Commission, I was met with severe retaliation. When the mayor first learned of my complaint to the Civil Service Commission, he pretended to care about me, stating he would devise a plan to make things better because he wanted to keep me as an employee. This, of course, was a lie. I was astonished when the Civil Service HR person responded with a brief letter stating I had no civil service protections because I was still on my probationary period. The mayor apparently received the same response, and his attitude completely changed. He became determined to retaliate because of my complaint. He authorized the village clerk to give me a written warning for insubordination. This was unjust and bogus. I was written up because I was accused of taking a bad passport photo. I defended myself by explaining why I thought the picture was okay. I explained in a calm and rational manner without raising my voice. I did not make threatening gestures, use foul language, or insult anyone. I did not even refuse to do as I was told. In fact, I said even though I thought my picture was okay at the time, I took it in the future. I would do so as the village clerk instructed. When I told the mayor I did not believe this met the definition of insubordination and that I feel I was unjustly written up, he responded by saying that I had been insubordinate because I continued to speak after the village clerk told me my picture was not okay. In other words, we cannot defend ourselves or have a difference of opinion on anything. To my surprise, the mayor then told me that this went to the village board and it was voted on, and that this is insubordination and the subject of disciplinary action. I was stunned. I was not even at this meeting and did not even know about it, nor was I given the opportunity to present my side in writing until after the board meeting at the time that I was written up. I never attend these board meetings, nor have I met half of the board members. Others I have only seen in passing, but the village clerk and deputy clerk were both present to state their version of events. Whatever happened to innocent until proven guilty? Who knows to what extent the truth was exaggerated in order to get the board to agree that I was insubordinate. It feels like the Salem witch trials, except they were more fair. At least the victims were allowed to state their case before being executed. That is when I submitted my resignation, knowing I had no rights or protections under this administration. I feel the way that this was handled was an absolute abuse of power. I just thought you should be informed as to what is going on behind closed doors of the village office. Keep up the good work that you do. It would be an injustice if this administration were voted back. There is no integrity whatsoever to this administration. Sincerely, yet another ex-village employee. So that is what we got from this employee. Some of it rings true to me based on what I've seen before. So I thought it was important that the board hear that.
Is there a reason why a letter such as that is read without the person being named?
This is
Otherwise, it could have been written just about by anyone.
so this was the letter that was sent to us, and there was no person named in it. Okay.
So it's an anonymous letter?
Well, not really, since it says I am the clerk that replaced Anne Marie.
But it wasn't signed.
No, it wasn't signed. I mean, I have a copy of the letter. It's just
And so you are addressing the board about that particular issue, or?
well, I think that it's important that you know a letter like this be brought to your attention, and to people in the village there as well, that there's a reason why this person left.
At least allegedly there is.
Well, there's two sides to every story, and this is one side. If you'd like to explain your side, I'd be happy to hear it, and I'm sure everyone would. But you know, and
We're here to hear you.
thank you very much.
Richard Walder, 20 Elm Street, is the point that was brought out here by the board and the attorney. I would just like to mention that the mayor, who I would address him tonight if he was here, has on occasion read anonymous letters to the camera. So the question of an anonymous letter, if it's good for the mayor, it's good for anybody else. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, then we will close the public comment portion of this meeting and move on. Agenda item number 1 would be approval of the village, first of all, the workshop. Well, we'll do the meeting first of the 28th. You've had a chance, I hope, to look it over and read it over. Is there anything that you would like to see corrected at this particular time?
No, I think we have made changes already.
Then I'll take a motion to accept the minutes for the May 28th meeting.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Trustee Belkane?
Aye.
Trustee Ippolito?
Aye.
Trustee Byers?
Aye.
Trustee Lancy?
Aye.
Motion passes.
The Village Board workshop on June 2nd, present, all trustees and the mayor were here. And it began with my reading a discussion, and having a discussion with the board regarding a proposal for an amendment to the Village of Webster Code, Chapter 156, Vehicles and Traffic, Article 3, Parking and Stopping, Section 156.15. And the change would read, parking of any vehicle in the streets of the Village of Webster between the hours of 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. is hereby declared unlawful, and the addition between November 1st and April 1st. The board discussed the safety issues, emergency traffic needs, common sense when parking on village streets. The board did feel that they needed more research in terms of talking with other villages and towns. It would be needed, and the topic should be discussed and brought up at a future village board meeting, and it will be done so at a later time. Mayor Cahill had a discussion with the board to allow Matt Chatfield, the executive director of the Webster Coalition for Community Economic Development, permission to borrow a desk from the Wellfield office to use for the next 5 months in a storefront on Main Street. It is being set up to get the business as well as the community input for America's Best Community Project. So the board decided the desk could be loaned to Matt Chatfield for the purpose of setting up the storefront office for the next 5 months. Carl Lauer and Bill Ruoff spoke to the village board, and they gave an update on the demolition of the baggage depot. Mr. Lauer said that there are 4 piles of leftover scrap wood from the demolition still on site from the depot. He asked the board's permission to declare these piles as surplus scrap so he could have Morgan Management's construction company discard what is not needed and left on the property. The rest of the wood will need to be transported to the well fields, and to do this, a flatbed truck was needed. And Mayor Cahill said coordination is needed with volunteers and flatbed trucks to transport what you want to keep. A definite date will have to be decided on to do all of this, and also a list of surplus scrap needs to be written up and turned in as part of a resolution. So meeting was then adjourned. There are no additions or deletions from that. I would ask for a motion to accept the minutes from the workshop.
I'll make that, go ahead.
I'll make that
I'll
motion.
second it.
Trustee Lancy?
Aye.
Trustee Ippolito?
Aye.
Trustee Belkane?
Aye.
Trustee Byers?
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, next item is the approval of claims and warrants. I had an opportunity to look them over, and Al, did you look them over as well?
I had a question on, I was gonna bring up, manholes for paving, $2,000.
Yes, part of the project the state's doing this year, the mill and pave, they've identified, I think it was 42 manholes in the village. They've agreed to do, I believe it was 20 supplied material, the rings and the covers for 20 of them, and they asked us to do an additional 12. I might be off a little bit on my numbers there.
A little bit.
But since they're all our structures, we figured it was a pretty good deal. One of the things we've also asked as part of the project, if we wanted the old ones that they're pulling off, and obviously there's some scrap value to them, and we'll go to the scrap yard now and then with other things here, so we said, absolutely. So that should be offset a little bit by, it's not gonna be $2,000 worth of scrap, but we will offset it a little bit with some stuff that we get back.
Okay, thanks.
I only had one and it's actually a comment to make, and that was with the Welch's Greenhouse, the hanging baskets at $33 a basket seems a little bit large, but I saw that they were the only one of 4 that responded to the village at this point too.
Yeah, and in comparison, say, so those we order typically in, I think around January,
Right.
when they're setting up and starting the greenhouses. We've compared them in years past as well with other suppliers, and we've looked at even online just to try to gauge, how much one of those baskets would be. And it's pretty consistent with what there is around. I've seen them as high as 45. I think 30 might be the lowest, 30, 32, somewhere in there. But they have the liners, I believe, with those as well. And we save a lot traveling because they're about a half mile down the road rather than going somewhere else to pick them up. We'll get back the savings in fuel and labor dollars. So, but we do go out and check or solicit.
Okay. Well, if nobody else has a comment on it, I'll take a resolution a motion to accept or approve the claims and warrants.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Trustee Belkane?
Aye.
Trustee Ippolito?
Aye.
Trustee Byers?
Aye.
Trustee Lancy?
Aye.
Motion passes.
You all right, Donna? Just checking.
It is 7:53, and next on our agenda is a public hearing regarding the term of office of deputy village officers. It was duly introduced at a meeting of the Village Board of Trustees of the Village of Webster held on May 14, 2015. The proposed local law number 2, 2015, entitled Term of Office of Deputy Village Clerk and Deputy Village Treasurer. Notice was given to conduct a public hearing here in the community room tonight at 7:45 or as soon thereafter, with a public hearing being convened, at which time all persons interested will be heard. The proposed law seeks to add an Article 3 to Chapter 13 of the Code of the Village of Webster, officers and employees, to provide that the term of office for the Deputy Village Clerk and Deputy Village Treasurer shall be 2 official years. All interested people are being given at this particular point in time the opportunity to be heard on the said proposed local law. So I would open the meeting at this time for anybody who is interested in addressing the board on that proposed law. Yes, Peter.
Public hearings are the one time the state demands the board allow people to speak. And the issue of terms is actually more important than it seems, because by extending them, the board actually loses some flexibility regarding its employees. First, I would like to address a point that's been repeatedly made by the mayor. In meeting after meeting, he has taken credit for fixing mistakes made by prior administrations. Even back to the 1980s, he said that in one meeting, thereby imputing the mayors and trustees that preceded him. Many had and have far deeper roots in the village of Webster, and yet he feels free to denigrate them over and over again. I think there may have been a book about this type of behavior called 1984, and I suppose most of you have read it. Anyway, so here we have an instance where the mayor says past boards were doing it wrong, setting the terms at 2 years when they should have been 1, but now rather than keep the fix, he wants to enshrine it. So when he likes the mistake, he'll take credit for it, and when he doesn't, he'll blame people for it. Now, on the merits of the resolution itself. This is a great opportunity for the board to actually fix something that every board assumed was set in stone, the 2-year term for deputy officials. I would urge the board to consider keeping it at a 1-year term. The 1-year term allows the board far more flexibility in its appointment of deputy officials. The sequence you now have in place now is 4 years for board members, 2 years for your clerk and treasurer, and 1 year for your deputy officials. There's actually no additional work required for the board in keeping the terms at 1 year, since there are annual appointments every year at your organizational meeting. It also allows for the deputy appointments to be tied to annual performance reviews. If there's a deputy official that's not working out well, or just not working out well with a clerk or a treasurer, it allows the board to easily take corrective action. But you know what, at its core, this is actually pretty simple, because 1 year plus 1 year equals 2 years. So you have one 2-year term is still 2 1-year terms. So you don't gain anything and you lose nothing by just keeping it exactly as it is right now. But there is a difference, and that's that you, the village trustees particularly, have far more influence on the appointment and the retention of deputy officials when it's a 1-year term. So all this resolution does in the end is bind the board and make it less flexible for all of the trustees. So I would ask you to please consider voting against the change, against making it as it was and keeping it as it is. Thank you.
Eric Reynolds, 64 Kircher Park. Peter was very eloquent in his statements. I highly agree with him. It's much easier to remove someone who's not working out if they're on a 1-year term rather than a 2-year term. Once they're appointed, they're appointed. But if it is working out, it's very easy to say, oh, we reappoint them. So this is really in your favor to keep it as 1 year. It's much harder to get rid of someone who's already appointed than it is to not reappoint them. That's my feeling, and I hope you keep it the same as it is now, 1 year.
Richard Wolder, 20 Elm Street. I would just like to say I agree with Peter and Eric that a 1-year term is much better for the board, especially for future boards with the incoming of the new election dates. You will be locking if you are not reelected, you will be locking in a future board to a employee who is not happy or not satisfactory for two years. Because you will be, with the election date offset from the annual meeting, you could be locking somebody up for an unhappy board being stuck with a previous clerk or person working for you. So I don't think it's a good idea. Thank you.
Anyone else? If not, it is 7:59, and I will close the public hearing portion of this. Some information and some things to think about. We do have a resolution that we could vote on, or we could table it for more consideration. We have,
My opinion is we just
What do you
vote.
say?
We just vote
Yeah.
tonight, I think, unless someone
Yeah.
else, if you guys disagree.
I'm fine.
okay. We do have a resolution of the Village of Webster Board of Trustees adopting local law number 2 of 2015 of the Village of Webster titled Term of Office for Deputy Village Clerk and Deputy Village Treasurer. At the meeting here on June 11th, the following resolution is being offered. Whereas pursuant to New York Village Law 3, Section 33024, the term of office of the Deputy Village Clerk or Deputy Village Treasurer is 1 official year, or the remaining portion thereof. And whereas New York Municipal Home Rule Law, Section 10(1)(2)A allows a village to adopt a local law relating to the terms of office of village officers, and whereas traditionally the term of office of the deputy village clerk and deputy village treasurer has been 2 official years, and whereas by resolution dated May 14, 2015, the village board of the Village of Webster has established a date, time, and place for the public hearing to consider enacting the local law. With respect to adding Article 3 to Chapter 13, whereas a notice of this public hearing was published and in the Webster Herald and was posted on the village bulletin board of the Village Hall at 28 West Main Street, Webster, New York, and whereas a public hearing on the matter has just been held by the Webster Village Board of Trustees on June 11, 2015, whereas all interested people were heard, and whereas this action is a Type 2 action under the New York State Environmental Quality Review Act. Specifically, it is a Type 2 action pursuant to NYCRR Section 617.5, 20, and 27. And whereas, as a Type 2 action, it is not subject to review under the New York State Environmental Quality Review Act, it is deemed not to have a significant impact on the environment and is otherwise precluded from the environmental review. And whereas the board has been presented with and has introduced the draft local law number 2 of 2015 titled Term of Office of Deputy Village Clerk and Deputy Village Treasurer, now therefore be it enacted by the Board of Trustees of the Village of Webster as follows. A new Article 3 is added to Village Code, Chapter 13, Officers and Employees, to be designated Section 13.9. Said section shall read as follows. The terms of office of the Deputy Village Clerk and Deputy Treasurer shall be official, 2 official years, or the remaining portion thereof. The local law shall take effect immediately. Do I have a motion for this resolution? With no motion coming forth, this is no longer an issue.
I
Next.
drafted all that for nothing.
That earns good money.
Sorry, John.
Tried to go as fast as I could. The next item agenda is completion of the Part 2 Short Environmental Assessment Form for the amendment to zoning local law with respect to temporary fences and driveways. So, Part 2, the impact assessment. The lead agency is responsible for completion of Part 2. Answer all the following questions in Part 2 using the information contained in Part 1 and other materials submitted by the project sponsor or otherwise available to the reviewer. When answering the questions, the reviewer should be guided by the concept, have my responses been reasonable, considering the scale and context of the proposed action. So I will read and I will ask if I will give a response, and if you wish to challenge that, you can do so. Number 1, will the proposed action create a material conflict with an adopted land use plan or zoning regulations? No. Will the proposed action result in change in the use or intensity of use of land? No. Will the proposed action have an impact on the environmental characteristics that cause the establishment of a critical environmental area? No. That was number 4. Number 3, will the proposed action impair the character or quality of the existing community? I believe impact would be very, very small if it did it all. No. Number 5, will the proposed action result in an adverse change in the existing level of traffic or affect existing infrastructure for mass transit, biking, or walkways? No. Will the proposed action cause an increase in the use of energy and it fails to incorporate reasonably available energy conservation or renewable energy opportunities? No. Will the proposed action impact existing public and private water supplies? No. Public and private wastewater treatment utilities? No. Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of important historic, archaeological, architectural, or aesthetic resources? I think that it would have very minimal impact if it had any. No. Will the proposed action result in any adverse change to natural resources? No. That would be water bodies, groundwater, air quality, flora, or fauna. Number 10, will the proposed action result in an increase in the potential for erosion, flooding, or drainage problems? No. Will the proposed action create a hazard to environmental resources or human health? I do not believe it will do so. All right. Then, in light of that, I think we will move to the next item, and that is...
Well, actually, what you need to do, Daryl, is, you see the box at the bottom of that page 4?
Yes, sir. I do.
That's where you now make the determination whether it does or does not have a
So
significant...
check this box if you have determined.
Right, you'll end up, I assume with all the no's, there's no significant environmental impact. So you would check the second box, and then someone, the mayor
It may
and or
result in
Jake, someone's
one
got to
more.
sign this and you throw it in the file, and just so it's there, so they know you did all this
Based
stuff.
on information, any supporting documentation that it will not result in. It would be the second box then that I
Right.
will check,
Correct.
and I will leave the rest of that for someone else to sign.
Probably you should, since the mayor's not
Name of the
here,
lead agency would be
the village of Webster, and you should probably sign it as deputy mayor or something, since you went through it tonight and the mayor's not here, so it's probably not appropriate for him to sign it.
Wow, it's your big night.
Yes, all these resolutions to read, I get stuck tonight. If you believe, pay back.
with broad
Have him sign it.
Print or type responsible officer.
At some point, check all these boxes or no. And this box gets checked. These are all no's. And just get Daryl to sign it. They will give them the date of today's date.
It's gotta go to Rosette.
Yeah,
Oh, and walk it over.
here, I just,
Both parts. We'll sign the other part.
thank you.
You forgot to put the deputy in.
No. Now, I go to item.
There you go.
Agenda item 6. And this is a resolution concerning the proposed amendment to sections 175-53, 175-65 of the zoning local law regarding amendment with respect to temporary fences and driveways. At the regular meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Webster held on June 11th, 2015, the following resolution was offered for adoption. Whereas pursuant to New York Village Law, Section 7700, the Board of Trustees is empowered to adopt local laws regulating the location and use of building structures and land for trade, industry, residence, and other purposes. Whereas this board has been presented with and has introduced a draft local law entitled Amendment to Zoning Local Law with respect to temporary fences and driveways, and whereas a public hearing on the matter was held by the board on April 23rd, 2015 at 7:45, and whereas all interested persons were heard, whereas a short form environmental assessment form for the proposed action was prepared and submitted to the village board and reviewed by the village board, and whereas the village board has reviewed and discussed the short form environmental assessment form, and whereas the village board has considered the related long-term, short-term, and cumulative effects on the environment, including simultaneously or subsequent actions which are likely to be undertaken as a result of this proposed action. And whereas the village board specifically considered Part 2 of the environmental assessment regarding the project's impact and their magnitude on land, water, air, plants, animals, agricultural land resources, aesthetic resources, historic resources, archaeological resources, open space, recreation, transportation, energy, noise, odor, public health, growth, and character of the community or neighborhood. And whereas the board considered the probability of an impact occurring, the duration of the impact, the permanency of an impact, and the control of an impact, local needs, local gains, and objections related to the impact, now therefore be it resolved. The proposed action is classified as an unlisted action under the New York State Environmental Quality Review Act. The village board is the lead agency. Based upon all information available to the board, it concludes that there is no potential large probability of an environmental impact occurring. The village board finds that the proposed action will not result in any significant environmental impacts. The village board finds that the proposed action will establish appropriate developmental controls and land use policies. The village board of the Village of Webster determines that the proposed action to amend the local zoning law will not have a significant adverse environmental impact, and a draft environmental impact statement will not be required to be prepared. The superintendent of public works of the Village of Webster is to give any and all notice that may be required by the Environmental Quality Review Act for this action. Do I have a motion to accept this
I'll make that motion.
resolution?
I'll second.
Trustee Lancy?
Aye.
Trustee Belkane?
Aye.
Trustee Ippolito?
Aye.
Trustee Byers?
Aye.
Motion passes.
And as a result of that, we are now ready for item number 7, which is the resolution, in fact, to adopt this local law, number 1, 2015, of the Village of Webster. That is titled, Amendment to Zoning Local Law with Respect to Temporary Fences and Driveways. At the regular meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Webster on June 11th, 2015, following resolution is being offered. Whereas pursuant to the New York Village Law 700, Section 7700, the Board of Trustees is empowered to adopt local laws regulating the location and use of building structures for land and land for trade, industry, residence, and other purposes. And whereas this board has been presented with and has introduced a draft local law entitled Amendment to Zoning Local Law with Respect to Temporary Fences and Driveways. And whereas by resolution dated March 10, 2015, the Village Board of the Village of Webster has established a date, time, and place for a public hearing to consider the local law with respect to amending sections 175.53 and 175.65. Whereas a notice was published in the Webster Herald, and whereas the meeting was held on April 23, 2015, and whereas all interested persons were heard, and whereas all notices or referrals as required by law to be given or made have been given and made. And whereas in accordance with Section 29, 239M and 239N of Article 12B of the New York State General Municipal Law, the proposed action was referred to the by the Village of Webster to the Monroe County Department of Planning and Development. And whereas the Monroe County Department of Planning and Development returned the referral without comment, and whereas this action is an unlisted action of the New York State Environmental Quality Review Act, and whereas the Village Board has determined this action will not have a significant impact upon the environment, and whereas it is in the public interest to enact the proposed amendment to the zoning local law, now therefore be it enacted by the Board of Trustees of the Village of Webster as follows. Number 1, Sections 175.53 and 175.65 of the zoning local law are amended as follows. Section A, or A, Section 175.53H, parking requirements is hereby amended by adding the following at the end of subparagraph H. No driveway shall be placed closer than 3 feet from the property line. B, Section 175.65A, fences is amended by adding the following. 3, a temporary fence is defined in subsection I shall not require a permit. C, Section 175.65F is amended to add, a temporary fence as defined in subsection I shall not be used as a permanent fence. D, Section 175.65 is amended by adding a new subparagraph I as follows. I, A temporary fence is defined as fencing of a temporary nature such as a snow fence, construction fence, special event fence, or any other type of temporary fencing used as a barrier to protect construction, to prevent public access, or is installed in the interest of public safety for an event. 2, this local law shall take effect immediately.
Daryl, actually, and I'll have to apologize, I was at a deposition in Buffalo on Monday, and I had my secretary do this resolution, so I didn't really get a chance to look at it. If you look at the actual local law, which isn't the resolution, it's a one-page.
Okay.
What he's trying to tell us, you didn't have to read all that.
Well, no, I had to read all that. But after this, she forgot to put 1 and 2, which is some of the guts of the law.
Oh, those are the dates, absolutely.
Right, so.
That is the
So
guts of
if you
it.
want to read those, this is the actual document, that's the local law that gets sent to the Secretary of State,
Okay.
not the resolution.
Okay. Which is what, in fact, was an issue that we had when we had the public hearing. And that would be items that follow section I as a definition of what the temporary fence is defined as. Number 1, construction and event fencing shall be allowed only during the length of the project or event. A snow fence shall be allowed from October 1st to April 1st of any year. And number 2, all temporary fences shall be adequately maintained and structurally sound. No temporary fence shall be placed in the public right-of-way without permission from the superintendent of public works. So there is definition in terms of length and time. Thank you, Don. Thought there was something else. So do I have a motion to?
Got a question.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry, I think I've never heard it read so eloquently, so it never popped into my head before. But section 17553H, the parking requirements, I just wonder if there's a difference, or if it's defined, I didn't see it earlier, between placed and replaced. If somebody has a house, especially in the old village where it's very close to the property line now, and they remove their driveway, can they replace it in the same location? Or does it have to go back somewhere else? And then,
I thought that we had discussed that with Will, and anything that was in place as is, if you were taking out and replacing it.
I just wonder if that's, and everything's open to interpretation. If I really wanted to be a pain, I guess I would say, well, no, you can't place it there. You moved it, so now you gotta put it somewhere else. And since I'm being a pain, I'm gonna continue on.
Well, that would be moving it as opposed to replacing it.
Right.
You can't replace your driveway closer than 3 feet from the property line without going to the zoning board of appeals to get a
But
variance.
if your driveway is currently 2 feet or a foot from the property line, and you
That's
remove
okay.
it, you can put it back right where it is.
But you still have to go to the zoning board of appeals.
If I dig it out and remove it and then repave it, is that replacing it and I have to get a new permit?
I think you gotta go to the zoning board.
That's what you said.
I don't think so.
That's what he asked.
Personally, I question why this is even in there. I was against this whole thing in the first place.
Well, the other question I would
Really,
have.
it's like when originally you said no fence could be closer than X feet to the property line. I don't think this should be regulated at all anyhow, but.
My other question, I think in the same paragraph, since I'm.
But I think if you dig up your, I don't know, do you need a building permit if you redo your driveway?
No, you wouldn't, for redoing the driveway, you might need a permit if you're putting a driveway where it's not allowed. I think if you're changing things, if you're putting it where it's not, and where, say you're going.
Increasing the size of the
apron,
apron or
increasing the
something like
size or
that.
something like that. But I just think, a lot of the things that I do are looking back at things 10, 15, 20, 50 years after they're done, and the interpretation of the intent at one time might be completely different than the interpretation of the intent. I just figured, I want to make it easy for my, the people that follow me 4 or 5 generations away to know exactly what was intended when this was passed. And even now, it seems like we might not all be on the same page. And in that same paragraph, it's silly, I know, but it's part of, you know, it could be placed no closer than 3 feet from the property line. I'm assuming we can cross the front property line and get out of our driveway to the street. But the way this is reading,
That's true.
we gotta stop 3 feet short of the front property. It doesn't say the side property line or property line is parallel to the driveway edge. It says you can't put it any closer than 3 feet from the property line, so technically, you gotta stop short of the apron there. And
Gotta stop before the sidewalk.
right. So I know that's not the intent, and it's kinda goofy, but,
I think you have to apply a little common sense.
oh, I think so too, but I figured once I was pointing out the other part, and what's common sense to one person might not be to another, depending on.
Well, if you hire a building inspector that forces somebody to stop their driveway 3 feet before they get to the road, you've made the wrong hire.
I think so.
And it will be back in front of the board. Another
Well,
amendment.
the main point is, I think, the definition to replace versus the
Yeah, I
place
think that's
versus
important,
replace.
because if you replace your driveway, you're not changing any part of it, just
No.
replacing it because the asphalt's shot. You shouldn't have to go
I have a
through.
gravel driveway. If I dig it out and put concrete in, am I replacing my driveway or am I improving my driveway?
That doesn't say replace, it just says place.
I'm replacing.
Right.
So, I think.
It's already placed
we went
there.
over this.
It's already there.
I am telling you, throw
the I remember. whole
thing out.
I don't remember what you
Whether
said.
you put concrete on it or,
Whether it's gravel or concrete or,
I
yeah.
think that's the
Seashell,
point
this is
he's
it.
making, is that, you know, you dig it out and replace it, is it the new driveway or is it the existing one rebuilt?
So, what Will had said was that as long as the footprint of the driveway
Is the
doesn't
same.
change,
right.
then you can replace it. If you change the footprint of the driveway, then you need a permit
Yeah.
for
That
the,
makes
for the
sense.
entire thing.
Sure. And just like the gentleman who came, lives over on the corner, came and wanted to extend their apron. Suddenly, they had to go to the zoning
Right,
board,
because
they
they
had
changed
to
the
have the variance and all that kind of thing for it.
Is that clear?
Yeah, could you add a line, this will not apply to driveways, replaced in the current location or whatever, there's.
Right, I think that there may be some verbiage that needs to be added for it.
Well, if you change this, you gotta start the process all over again. If you make any amendments, it has to first sit on the legislators' desks for 7 days. You have to republish a public hearing, you have to have a new public hearing, and then adopt it.
All that doesn't matter, we gotta make it right.
Well, I'm just telling you what the process is. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it or not, I'm just telling you what you gotta do.
You can delete parts of it, right? Not doing that.
Nope, if you make any change to it, you have to start all over again.
Replacing is not placed. It's
So that the
already
public
there.
can have its impact, its,
So I don't see
its
that
input.
issue.
Well, the question is the definition between replace and rebuild.
So replace is in there, just says place, but it's kind of how.
You know, this language, I don't know who came up with this language, I think it was Will who did it, who wrote it.
We all
So
understand
if
the
Will,
intent, but
so if Will
that doesn't
understands
mean-
what it,
Okay, back to what is
Hey,
it
that doesn't mean the building inspector or board 10 years from now
Doesn't
will
say anything about
understand the
replace,
intent.
it says
No.
place.
And then the old.
It's already
building,
there,
you're kind of
footprint is
stuck
there.
Period.
with where
You
your
can do
driveway
whatever you
is.
want, you can have seashells if you want in place. That's your prerogative.
Good.
Well, may-
I don't know, I don't see a problem with it. Do you?
As long as we-
He's gonna
Just
let
as
you-
long as we
he's
all
gonna let
agree.
you do it.
Yeah, it's fine. Let's get on.
So if I pull up my driveway on Main Street, let's say, and go to replace it, I won't have to go to zoning.
Nope.
If
No.
if I remove the grass and put asphalt back in.
Oh.
Just wanna make sure.
Jakester.
As long as the asphalt's green.
No, they're being really, it's a driveway there. It's the nicest grass in the yard.
All right. Let's go.
Do I have a motion to accept, to approve this local law?
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
I'll second. That sounds self-enthusiastic.
Trustee Abolito?
Aye.
Trustee Belkane?
Aye.
Trustee Byers?
Aye.
Trustee Lancy?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Yeah.
Okay. Next, we have an authorization for Mayor Cahill to sign a letter of agreement with the Leahy Company for Workers' Compensation Insurance Premium Recovery Service. I'll read it to you. This letter came, it's actually addressed to Christina. This letter will serve as the entire agreement relative to our workers' compensation insurance premium recovery service. Our firm will conduct a complete review of your premium calculations, including experience rating modifications, classification codes, rates, payroll allocations, discounts, and other modifiers applicable to the 7/1/15-16 policy period and all previous policy periods as permitted by the carriers and rating authorities. The purpose of the review is to identify and correct any errors, thereby generating refunds, reduced premiums, and/or credits from your carriers. Once identified, we will obtain amended experience rating modifications and have them and all other corrections applied by your carriers. Our fee is 50% of the actual refunds, reduced premiums, or credits that you receive as a result of our work on your behalf. If there is no recovery, there is no fee. You will not be invoiced until you receive a check. I believe it again is a one-time process that if they do find money that we are owed, they will take 50% of that, and from then on, any reduction in premiums, whatever, become ours. So, if there's no objection, I would like to put forward a motion for authorization for the mayor to sign.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
That's fine.
Trustee Lancy?
Aye.
Trustee Belkane?
Aye.
Trustee Ippolito?
Aye.
Trustee Byers?
Aye.
Motion passes.
I do know that there are certainly errors in things. We found one, was it Verizon? Whatever, it was a 2006 policy for the cell antennas. They initially had a rental of $1,700 per month and a 3% increase for each year thereafter. For the first 5 years, there was no increase in the rental. And it only began to increase, I believe, 6 years ago, at 3%. So right now, we are looking to reclaim an awful lot of money back from their failure to meet their contract. So I think that there's value in this.
Absolutely, even with New York State Insurance Fund,
Right.
my first few months here last year, they came in to do an audit, and my number didn't match theirs. They made a $120,000 mistake. That I kept calling them saying, listen, my numbers don't match with yours, I don't know what your issue is. And that, brought the premium down, obviously, by $20,000, but everybody can make a mistake. You just put a number into the calculation that didn't belong. So, yep. And it won't cost us a penny, really. It'll be extra money that we'll get, no matter what they find.
Worthwhile.
So, nitpicking things as some people on this table are wanting to do. It says, where it says our 50% fee is due net upon presentation. So it's due once you get their bill. And then it says past due invoices incur a finance charge of 1.5 per month. So when's it past due? The very next day after you get it? It doesn't, usually it should say 30 days, usually.
should be now.
But it doesn't say that in here. So I'll leave that to the treasurer if you want to change that. But technically, if you don't pay it the minute you get the bill, they can charge you 1.5%.
You know, I'd have a good influence on you.
That was good.
Usually it should probably say,
Done.
invoices past 30 days or
Yeah, it
something
should-
will
should
incur a
say
finance
payable
charge.
within 30 days.
So does the attorney have anything more to say? It's your turn.
That's good, though.
That's all I say. I doubt they actually come after the village for the 1.5% as long as you paid it within 30 days, but
Still.
still,
I always fight if they do ask for it.
yeah.
I assume that's it right now.
That's it.
All right, we are to the office. Josette? First thing, right?
Comp time, Jake, did you get a chance to review that?
Yep, and one of the things that Mike questioned is a call-in for the Bradshaws there. That was when they did the household hazardous collection day with the work in Monroe County, town of Webster, town of Penfield. They go back and forth between Webster and Penfield to do an east side household hazardous waste collection. And every year we send help over to that event. It's pretty significant amount of materials that they pick up and keep from people from disposing of improperly. So it's a very worthy thing that they do, and these guys have been doing it. At least one of them I know has been doing it for about the last 5 years, and most of that time I think it was both of them. So they'll do it on a Saturday in April.
Yep.
Christina, would you like to address the budget transfer modifications?
Would you like me to read them all?
Oh, my goodness.
We just kind of blanketed, I'm gonna make the assumption that you've all reviewed them. I will note that the first one there you have on your list of $15,000, that was an error on my part. That should not be an item to be approved. So when you approve, it'll be minus that $15,000 entry.
Okay, because I was going to ask about that.
Yes, I recently spoke to the Office of the State Comptroller regarding the setup of reserve accounts to make sure it was clear in my mind. And the way it's been presented is not the way it should. The money comes straight from fund balance. There's no transfers from capital or what have you. You take the money from one account and move it to another. It's not any inter-fund transfers or, what's the name of that account? Those items should not be used. It's just kind of almost like a placeholder on the budget itself, but it honestly comes straight from fund balance. So that item will be deleted. And the others, as you can imagine, a cleanup of the budget, robbing Peter to pay Paul, kind of. We did a lot of work this past year to make sure that items were expensed to the account they really belonged to, instead of just putting it to a line where we knew we had funds. So there are some lines that Daryl did point out to me earlier today. I do know that there are some lines that are still of need to be adjusted. We do have one more payroll for 2 days. I didn't want to make, we're going to have to make more adjustments, so there's going to be another probably 2 pages worth at the next June meeting, and then we'll be done. And there's also an opportunity for me to also adjust the budget without necessarily having to do modifications in this fashion, but when you're just moving from one 400 line to another 400 line, it's just a straight journal entry, and it's not necessary to be presented in this fashion, which I also forwarded the board information about that earlier this week as well. Anyone have any specific questions regarding any of the lines? I mean, as you know, the street lights are the electricity, the electric, the gas are the lines that really cost the most, as well as retirement.
I had a couple of, I guess, just ideas in that I know it was brought up. In terms of looking at, there's an awful lot of lines that say the line was under budgeted, and some of them are particularly like gas, electric, RG&E, and so on. Will we now take this, go back, reevaluate, take a look at the budget we have currently approved and kind of see where we are?
Again, it was my first year at the budget process.
Right.
I did the best I could to look at the bills and
All right,
guesstimate
I'm
the
just
best
saying,
I
this is a
could.
great opportunity for us now to go back,
Absolutely,
take a
yeah.
look and find out either why it was under budgeted, maybe there's a reason for it, and
Right.
do whatever. Okay.
As you can tell, if it was a significant dollar amount, I tried to hone in on the reason why it was over.
Yeah.
And obviously, budgets are our best guess. Lots of things come up during the year that nobody could possibly have anticipated. So consequently, the changes need to be made.
Yeah. Tell you, I under-budgeted my RGD bill, so I don't understand that.
That's a hard line to estimate,
Right,
really.
exactly.
The best you can, but you're not always gonna win.
Yep. That is what it is. All right. Well, with the exception of the initial transfer from the interfund, transfer from capital to reserve, with the exception of that, have you all had a chance to look over the rest of the transfers? Then I would entertain a motion to accept these transfers.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Trustee Abolito?
Aye.
Trustee Lancy?
Aye.
Trustee Belkane?
Aye.
Trustee Byers?
Aye.
Motion passes.
I would like to make a motion. We made a decision, it's a change from the organizational structure, and I would like to make a motion that the liaison to the village office be Trustee Ippolito. It is a change from Mayor Cahill. So if I would have a motion, we will make that adjustment.
I'll second it.
Trustee Belkane?
Aye.
Trustee Lancy?
Aye.
Trustee Byers?
Aye.
I won't vote. Stay.
Motion
Well,
passes.
I'm not gonna.
We only need three.
There you go.
Okay, Jake, Department of Public Works, sir.
It will
You're
be
up.
quick. Just seeking authorization to renew Mike Bradshaw's New York State DEC commercial pesticide license. This is kind of the culmination of all the trainings that you authorize him going to, and once he gets the training, every 3 years he has to renew his license. And the lovely state of New York charges $450 to sign a piece of paper that says you are licensed, and we've received all your certificates that you send us. So we look to have that approved so he can continue being a certified pesticide applicator. We would also seek authorization. I should probably start this out. One of our newest employee. Peter D'Amico has offered his resignation or submitted his resignation. He's going to pursue a different opportunity, something that he has a little more control over, and I certainly think he's going to do excellent at it. So it's a loss for the village in that regard, but I think we wish him well, and I think on the plan side, I think he'll do really, really well. In that light, we've also opened up a labor position then. So I'd like to seek authorization to hire Brandon Matillier for the position of laborer at a rate of $15.81 per hour, and the start date of on or after June 15th. Obviously pending the positive pre-employment checks. He's interviewed with us last year before we made the hire of Peter. I think he was high at the top of everybody's list as well. So I look forward, I think they'll do an excellent job as well. He has a lot of experience doing the similar work that we do here at the village.
So I was actually on the panel of interviews for that position last time, and I think when we narrowed it down, I think the 3 candidates, all of them were very qualified for the job, and I think I also had him 1 and 2 on my list, so I would be in favor of that.
I do have a question. Well, maybe I'll bring it up after the authorization. Right. Okay, so we're looking for authorization to renew the commercial pesticide applicator license for Michael Bradshaw at a cost not to exceed $450. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Trustee Polito?
Aye.
Trustee Belkane?
Aye.
Trustee Byers?
Aye.
Trustee Lancy?
Aye.
Motion passes.
And I would also seek a motion for authorization to hire Brandon Boutillier for the position of labor at a rate of $15.81 per hour with a start date of on or after June 15th, 2015, pending positive pre-employment checks.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Trustee Ippolito?
Aye.
Trustee Lancy?
Aye.
Trustee Belkane?
Aye.
Trustee Byers?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Hey, Jay, can you give us a quick construction update on, I get a lot of questions. Hey, when's Main Street gonna get taken care of? And
Did you want to look at your email?
I've got it right here.
okay,
What is the project New York State, as everybody can tell by the cones, New York State's doing a project that's basically a mill and pave on Main Street and North and South Avenue. Part of that, though, they're able to do some curb improvements, some crosswalks, some driveway aprons, some sidewalks in certain areas where they identified. Right now, they're doing a lot of the preliminary work for that milling and paving and be able to get in there and start working on the gutters. I stay in contact with the engineer in charge. We talk quite frequently. What I've been trying to do is collect the information and spread that out to, especially in the business district here, the folks that it's really going to impact. While they're working on it that day, you know, for instance, if they're tomorrow morning, they're going to start doing some curb work, or excuse me, milling, basically around the perimeter of the entire project, about 4 feet out from the curb. They're going to do that so they can then work on the curbs, set the grades, and the sides cross slopes that they're going to need when they're doing the rest of the milling. I took that information, I spread it out to give it to the bid so that they can distribute it amongst all their members. As it gets further along in the project, I've talked to them about getting ideas and schedules to when we say, all right, this day we're going to be milling West Main Street, we're going to be milling East Main Street or paving, and then I want to be able to put that on the website. I know we've discussed it. Daryl's been a big advocate of it as well, of getting that information out to the public. So we put, once we have larger, more definite impacts schedules, I want to make sure that we can kind of meet those needs of people and say, you know, frankly, if someone's working on a drain inlet on the side of South Avenue right now, it's not a huge impact on anybody. Might have a few moment delay getting by, but the traffic set up pretty well. When they start paving the street, if you remember Ridge Road, there's going to be some decent backups, and it might be helpful to know I'm going to take a different route around home that day. I also want to put a link on our website, when Carol gets back, put a link on our website to the DOT site. I did go out there and check that today, though. They don't have anything on it.
2014-15, they still have Ridge Road.
Right. No, it's helpful to know what was done, I guess, not what they're doing. But they said it's updated monthly, so we'll look forward to it. But I think in reality, the best information is probably going to be what we're getting from the contractor and the engineer in charge here. And they've been great to work with. So I expect that to continue. When we get that information, we'll put it on there. But a short answer, I guess I should have given a while ago, is that tomorrow and Monday, they're going to be working on milling and paving the entire perimeter about 4 feet out, setting the slopes and getting some of that work done. And then they're going to continue on with some of the other prep work, some of the curbing and things like that. I have a schedule. I think before they started, that schedule was changed, so it's not really good anymore. But we get periodic updates and try to keep everybody in the loop.
I do like the link to the DOT just because of the fact that, like I said before, I think if we, as the village, put out too much information and it's incorrect, it's going to come back to us. So I think us not giving too much information out, because I think I saw signs up here, it was going to start this date, and then it changed to this date, and then it changed to this date.
Yeah.
I mean, every day it changed. So I don't want to be the one responsible for that, you know what I mean? So.
That's the interesting part, is when they said the construction, and looking at my schedule, construction is going to start on, I think they had a 5/26 or 5/18, whatever it said. That included putting the signs out that say construction is going to start. That's the state's definition, that's part of the construction.
Then a cone.
Yeah, dropped the phone off, so they have a big flashing sign. But I think once we get closer to larger scale impact things, I don't want to ever put up a schedule, I really don't want to put up a schedule for somebody else, but if I get the information from the engineer or from the construction company, and it's pretty sound, it's gonna be short term. It's not gonna be, hey, next 3 weeks we're doing this. It's gonna be, hey, it's Friday afternoon, or it's Thursday, next week, this is what they have planned. They were planning on milling this last Friday, though. The equipment didn't, they had equipment issues, and then, weather delays and things like that, so it's a constantly changing thing. But we can give as much as we have, but I'm definitely always gonna say, subject to change, and it's not our project. Any questions, check the state's website. So, I don't wanna own bad information or give anybody things that aren't accurate.
An interesting concern is the corner down here. They filled in all the storm, and there's quite a bit of water. I don't know if Mary's flooded, it's happened twice or whatever on the corner here.
Yeah, we, again, it's the state part of that state project, what they're doing in areas where there's any iron in the street, they call it, they're dropping down the manhole covers, or the manholes in the drain inlets, water valves, gas valves, anything that's in the street that normally comes up to grade, that gives you access to some sort of infrastructure below, they're going and lowering those. So when they do mill, they'll be able to just go through and mill, they won't have any of these things in the way to hit. They're gonna go through and mill, then they're gonna raise them up to the level they're gonna be after the paving, and, get the paving done. So they, it's a challenge, because they're trying to balance, lowering them down and getting the preparation done for milling with having them still in service. They could lower them down, put a grate back on there, but then you'd have a huge drop off into that. And with, the amount of rain we had last Friday in such a short period of time, it certainly, it goes down faster normally, but that was still a lot to take, so. And one other real quick thing on the North Ave, another project, North Ave Connector project. That's our project, the grant that was secured. It's about $1 million project altogether, but I think we got $811,000 from the federal government. That's starting today. We had a meeting with the engineer that was selected, Blue Engineers, about scoping, and a preliminary meeting for scoping, which we're going to take and develop and come up with their estimate, that then will turn into the contract for them to provide that preliminary design work, some of the right-of-way work. That has to, because it's a state road, with the preliminary design, that turns into a design approval document, gets sent to the state, they approve the plans on their road, and it comes back, and then they come up with the construction plans. There's different phases, and through that process, we're gonna be asking for board resolutions and authorizations for additional funds, or it's additional portions of the project come up. Not additional funds other than what we got, but right now we've authorized, I think it's $75,000 for scoping in the right-of-way incidental phases of the project. Altogether, the village, I think it's 275 or so altogether is what it was. He's done the first 75 of that for those 2 phases, if you will. There'll be additional phases coming on. The construction phase is going to be the big one. But that's still in progress. And again, we had a meeting today, the first meeting, and they expect hopefully in the next week and a half, 2 weeks, we'll get some information back from them and can work towards getting that contract and getting this done. And that construction is building off of what the state's doing right now. It's not like we're gonna, let them go through and pave everything and park it up nice and then go tear it all up and redo it. This is kind of an extension of that, and we've been working with the state right from the beginning on what the plans are for that. So I think it's gonna really work together nice and build off, but construction's gonna be about 2017. So we're gonna continue, for quite a while doing the scoping, get the design approvals, and then work towards the final design and construction documents after that.
Did they say anything today? I was not there. Did they say anything today about public meetings?
Yes.
Any
Yeah.
projection as to when, early, later, in the fall, or?
They haven't, set dates or had discussions on the dates, but one of the things that everybody expressed there was the interest in getting good turnouts and making sure that we're, getting the news out there when those projects are gonna happen. He said the state representative said he went to one recently where he thought it was a pretty decent turnout. There was about 70 or 80 people in the room. He said he went to another one not that long ago. I think it might even been after the other one where there was 3 people. So we're certainly aiming more towards the 70, 80 than the 3. And one of the questions that we had is where in the process does that happen? And it's sometimes it's tough if you have a meeting, hey, and what are the ideas? You almost have to have something for the public to chew on and to consider and then work off of those. So that was some of the discussion today, was setting up like a preliminary design, some ideas that then could be presented, options, and we could work off that and give somebody something to look at, so.
Okay. Tied in with the pesticide application, the paper has announced that we are going to be adjacent to a relatively large art festival. Actually coincidental with our jazz festival on July 25th. And for those who are not aware of it, the art festival from the waterfront down in Canandaigua is going to be held here on the 25th and 26th of July, I believe. And I was just wondering, in conjunction with all of that, what I've noticed is that there are a lot of weeds growing in the areas of mulched, where the flowers would have been put. And this is a perfect opportunity to go in with a application, whatever, and get those weeds and get them out of there. And I mean, looking ahead to next year when we go and plant, we really could make opportunity to get that all ready and get rid of those. So we look good in a month.
Absolutely. One of the things, it's funny you mention it, and thank you for authorizing some temporary or seasonal help last time. We've actually started today. One of the seasonal person, Sam, that was hired, is starting today, going through and starting to weed those planters. One of the things, if you remember, part of the street tree program and inventory project was a request for some soil samples in some of those on-street planters. I didn't want to go through and add anything else to that might goof up those samples. I want to take those pretty soon as well, while we don't have anything growing in there. So I'm always a fan too, if we can take them out mechanically, that's great. Sometimes it's way too time consuming, sometimes it's way too problematic and you can't get them and they're just gonna grow back. But if we can get them, pull things out, they're not gonna seed. And some of the notifications, had spirited discussions with the DEC in regards to their rules, to the point where I remember, I know I've discussed this before, I asked them if we took a steam jenny out there and sprayed the weeds in the sidewalk. According to their definition, that's a pesticide application. If we intended to kill them, it's a pesticide application. So I asked them if we could spray pesticide on them, intending to hurt them really bad, if we don't have to do the same notifications. And they said, no, we still have to do the notification. So sometimes I think the way that the rules are, some of the signs that are put up, if you apply things according to the label instructions, that should be the requirement. And frankly, they make you put up a sign for 24 hours saying that somebody can't enter an area for 24 hours when the label instructions and the approvals that are received say as soon as it's dry you can go in there. And it's fine. And I think that's misleading and concerning to people. So if I can take them out mechanically, that's what I'll do, because it avoids that.
Well, that'd be great.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, we're gonna have a lot of people in it who really want it to look really good.
Yeah, I think so. And
I don't know how we get the businesses to kind of buy in front of their property. That'd be awesome.
Good
for them
old
to do
days,
that,
everybody
but,
took care of their own.
no.
And they
I
don't.
did want to thank, I don't know if it was Hatters or the smoke shop next door there, somebody painted our trash cans on Main Street the other day. I drove by and figured I was going to drive by a few times so they were almost done and then tell them they were ours, because I didn't want to stop them halfway through. But they did look nice over there, so they did paint those. So some people take extra pride and stuff, for sure.
Got some announcements we're doing after.
Yeah.
After.
Dear.
Just get it right.
You want to go to this?
It doesn't matter, I can get it
All
straight.
right. I'll do a couple of quick announcements before we go to the live call-in. First of all, I would like to announce, it's not very well known, but baseball is back in Webster. The New York Collegiate Baseball League has started up, actually June 1st, at the Basket Road Field, Boutillier Industrial Parkway, for another summer. And these are young collegiate athletes who are from around the country and play for our Rochester Ridgeman team. And it's an awesome way to spend an evening. It's free, and I hope you will support them. Also, there is a pharmaceutical waste drop box that is now ongoing Monday through Friday from 8:30 to 4:30 in the lobby of the town hall. And I believe that in the first 2 weeks that it was installed, they have taken in 115 pounds of unused, unwanted, or expired medications. So if you have anything, you do not have to wait for those special days anymore. You can take the medications and the things that you might tend to throw down the waste disposal or flush down the toilet and take them there for proper removal. And that certainly would help in terms of our water source, Lake Ontario, as well as landfills. I would also note that the Joe Obie Farmers Market, it begins this Saturday, and from 8:30 to 1 o'clock every Saturday, as well as from 2 to 6 on Wednesdays at the Webster Town Center. There will be an opening day celebration with Scout Pack 108, not only just to help open up at 10 o'clock, but also to celebrate Flag Day. So Joe Obie begins, and the produce is beginning. I had my first radishes from my garden today. And summer celebration, just a reminder that the 175th anniversary of the town of Webster is this year. And on Saturday, June 20th, which will be before our next board meeting, the Webster Summer Celebration at the Webster Recreation Center will be taking place. That begins at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, runs through 9. Music beginning at 7:45, and then fireworks at 9:45 to finish off the evening. So those are events that I hope you will take advantage of. And so now, if we have any callers, the live call-in is 265-3772, and please state your name and address when you call. Anybody else have anything?
The next Wine Trail event is 19th of June, 6 to 9.
And tickets are available online at the Webster Bid.
Or participating locales.
Oh. Nobody? All right. Our next village board meeting will be on June 25th, and our next workshop will be on June 30th. And now I think that I would like to have a motion to adjourn for a private session with our attorney before we actually adjourn and close the meeting. We will come back after that, and the meeting will be closed.
And just to, a little more specifically, it's regarding potential litigation, so it's not open to the public due to the attorney-client privilege.
Go ahead there, you want to go to the room and then come back? Okay. Let's head to the room and then we'll come back, and we will be closing as soon as we get back.
We probably need a motion to that effect.
Yeah.
To that effect?
For the adjournment.
Okay, so I'd like to take a motion to adjourn for a attorney-client privilege, discussing a possible litigation.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Trustee Alito?
Aye.
Trustee Belkane?
Aye.
Trustee Byers?
Aye.
Trustee Lancey?
Aye.
Motion passes.
At 9:02.